Tamara Hergert with the Empowered Artist Community, and today I have the honor of interviewing an amazing artist. His name is Robert Najlis, and he is so amazing because I think after reading all of his uh, titles in the background, from his background, you will be just amazed. So he has a master's degree in fine arts. Plus, he has a computer science degree, a master's in computer science degree. Plus, if that's not enough, he had a focus in artificial intelligence and cognitive science. So that also is reflected in his art. And he's also a Fulbright scholar. So I am completely awestruck with all the things that he has accomplished in his life. And so, Robert, you have this vibrant body of artworks, and it's a combination of abstract art and also this really impressionistic look and feel in terms of how you apply your brushstrokes and how the emotion in your artworks is expressed. So, and you also use this super beautiful hue of yellow. It kind of you can see kind of your artworks. So, tell me a little bit about your Fulbright scholar experience and how you first of all how you heard about the program, how you got in, and how it influenced your body of work in general. I know this is a big question.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me here. I'm really, it's a real treat, and you have a wonderful community. So I'm also very honored to be a part of this today. So thank you for that. All the titles, and I mean, it sounds like a lot, but I don't know, it's just a part of life sometimes, and we find ourselves studying this or going there, and I've been fortunate really to have some opportunities. You mentioned the MFA, and that was a wonderful opportunity where I really learned a lot and grew a lot as an artist. And the Fulbright, it's funny. So the Fulbright scholarship is really meant as an opportunity for cultural exchange. It's sponsored by the U.S. government, and I grew up with. I mean, it's a hard scholarship to get, and I grew up thinking, just not even thinking of it as a possibility. Right? It's one of the things that was kind of out there, and some people get it, and I don't know how. But I grew up. I grew up right outside of New York City, and I grew up going to the museums there. The Museum of Modern Art, but also the Met. And the Met, it has artwork from all over the world, and it's an amazing opportunity. And I grew up influenced and inspired by that. And I think for me, the idea of the Fulbright, of a cultural exchange, it made sense. And it made sense with my artwork, because while I'm deeply influenced by a lot of Western art, the New York School, the Abstractionists, the Impressionists, as you mentioned, Matisse and Miro, my artists that I love, I've also been influenced by art from other parts of the world. And one of the main influences for me was Chinese art. And that's what my Fulbright was actually for. It was to go to China and study Chinese art, not to becoming a Chinese calligrapher or painter, it's a lifelong endeavor, but to understand the principles underneath and how it relates to Western art. And it's actually, you were talking about my book, Color Movement Theory, and
yeah,
my original idea for the Fulbright was to really look at the use of pictorial space in Chinese art. But I also found something that I knew about, but I learned a lot more. If you look at Chinese clothing, the silk robes, and the use of color in that, it really opened my eyes to the different sensibility of how one might use color, and opening us to think about, we're often taught these prescribed ways. These are the colors, these are the colors that go together. But actually, there's a tremendous amount of opportunity and variability, and learning from different cultures, but learning that we can make it our own. We can make color our own, make it personal. And you mentioned yellow.
Yes.
I, it turns out I like yellow. I didn't even realize it until one day somebody was in my studio and said, "Wow, that's a lot of yellow." And I said, "Really? Oh yeah. Oh, it's funny how sometimes we're so ensconced in what we do, we don't realize, oh yeah, that is a lot." But I think yellow it's a really vibrant color. It's a delicate color in the sense of once you go a little bit darker, it's orange or it's brown or it's green.
Yes.
So to keep yellow, you really have to listen carefully to who yellow is and what it's telling you and how it works and how we can support it with other colors
Yes.
around to make it sing.
Yeah, that's so interesting how you mentioned that the supporting colors or the colors, that how they all play together. And I think the book that you have written, the color movement, I've read it and it's wonderful. So it made me think of color and different combinations of colors in a completely different way. Like the way you give examples and actually show your point with different paintings from a big variety of artists. Um, it makes it so easy to understand, how the color moves, how they interact with each other, and how they can support or not support each other. You know,
Yeah.
how so it makes it possible to understand the masterpieces. Like, sometimes you look at the painting and you think, how is this so good?
Yeah. How'd they do that? How did they? Right. Exactly.
How did they do this? And then by reading your book, you can actually um, get a very good understanding of, okay, now I get it. Now I understand how their choice of color made this so natural and organic, and like, um, it looks like all the colors are playing so well together. And if you change it just a little bit, like there are a couple examples where you change the color just a little bit,
Yeah.
and you're like, oh yeah, that looks completely just off. If they just
Yeah.
just a little bit differently on the hue, it just throws off the entire perception of that painting. And so I think it's super valuable to just even see the examples that you are giving in the book. So what moved you to write this book? I know you have already mentioned that it sort of kind of came to you, right?
Yeah, it came to me over a long time. It's well, I mentioned, growing up and going to the museums, and I remember even when I was young. So I grew up looking at these colors, and I was painting even when I was young. And at first, when you're very young, you're just working, you just play, you don't know that much necessarily. And then I started to study some color theory, and I found there was this big divide. It's like, this is how colors are supposed to be, but this is what I feel. And in fact, when I started teaching, I found the same problem with my students, where either color theory either becomes very analytical. This is the color wheel. This is the position of the colors on the wheel, even though there's many different color wheels and they all have different positions of colors. But this is a position, and if you follow these geometric shapes, your colors will go together. And that, as opposed to what people were looking for, which is the emotions that colors bring, the feeling that it brings, how it makes a painting that makes our lives come alive and sing. And it's
Yeah.
not just paintings; it's our clothing, it's our furniture, it's everything we do, in our lives. And that divide, that was one of the big things that motivated me. Is I want a color theory that supports my intuition, that helps me ask questions. Like you were mentioning that in the book, I'll take a painting and I'll change the color. And the reason is I want to ask a question and I want to be able to get an answer. I want to understand what's happening. And I felt with traditional color theory, if I change the color, it's okay, yeah. There wasn't, well, why? And I wanted to
Yeah.
understand how colors talk to each other and what's the language of color. And there was another motivation as well. I've studied music. I would not call myself a musician whatsoever, but I play a little music. But perhaps more importantly is in the course of that, I studied music theory.
Hmm.
And music theory is very, very clear on the idea of movement. This note leads to that note. This note pulls away from that note. Here we have consonants and colors or sounds that go together. Here we have dissonance and tension and sounds that move apart. They're very clear about it. So clear that you can have arguments about it. I mean, it's not to say that they're so clear and they have everything figured out and there's no questions, but rather there's a real clarity. There's an understanding of the language of sound and the relationships of sound, and enough of a understanding that we can have differing opinions as well, which I think is a good thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I started looking at color theory, and there's very little discussion of movement. What colors how are they moving? How are colors talking to each other? What's their
Yeah.
language? And only a few people, and in fact, Joseph Alberts in his book, The Interaction of Colors, it's interesting. I've read the book numerous times, and I always, we always hear simultaneous contrast, but I was rereading and I suddenly I saw, oh, he's really criticizing traditional color theory, like
Yeah.
really, really directly. And he's calling for a change. And he's calling for consonance and dissonance, like we see in music.
Um,
But how do we do that? How do we create that sense of movement, but also how do we make it so we don't once again find ourselves in this divide of analytical and intuitive, but rather we have something that we can use to help cultivate and foster our intuition. You can't
yeah.
paint and do calculus at the same time. You just or even
Right.
look at a painting. You don't want to look at Van Gogh and say, "Oh, I understand it because I don't know, some mathematical form." No, you want to feel it, and you want. I think at least I think we want an understanding of the language of color that helps us understand it further and helps us feel it further.
Yeah.
So I wanted something that would have movement and bring together the
Yeah.
analytical and the intuitive
Yeah. I think it's
and
logic
keep it
and the
simple.
intuition that you want to bring together, because it's
It,
after
yeah,
reading your book, I realized that that was the missing piece that I always search for, like in creating my paintings. I always felt like, okay, well, I have this background, and now what do I like? What hue do I use for the elements around it? And like in my own work, I've realized that over the years that they sort of all have the same, like they all influence each other. Like the colors that are
yeah,
in all the objects, they kind of repeat each other in the adjacent objects. So it's sort of like if you just use uh, color blocks, it is very tricky. Like like some artists just use solid color blocks in their paintings. For
mm.
me, it would be very tricky because I cheat. Sort of, my paintings are painterly, and so I use the same color here, the same color there, and then I blend it in, and then it
yeah,
kind of all looks like they're all repeating each other, and it all looks very natural, and I consider it more realistic and more cheating way because that's how I see the world. It's all interacting with each other,
Yeah,
and like the sky reflects in the lake reflects in
sure.
the sky, the landscape reflects the lake and the sky, and then there's a bird that reflects both the sky, the lake, and the landscape behind.
Yeah.
And so it's all going well together. But if you were to tell me, okay, here's a challenge for you, you can only use one color for the sky, one color for the background, like for the landscape, and
Yeah.
one color for the lake, and one color for the bird flying, above the lake. That would be a super challenge for me. But thanks to your book, I think I could actually accomplish accomplish the painting because I now understand how it all needs to play together.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
it
and
click.
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, this idea of mixing colors into each other or having large blocks, they're both effective ways to paint, right? I look at some of Matisse's work in large areas of color, or some of his earlier work where he's mixing things in a lot more, or Monet mixing colors in a lot more. Again, for me, it should never be this is the way to paint or that's the way to paint. It's how do you want to paint? How do you want to speak? What do you want to talk about, and how do you want to say it? And again, I wanted a way of understanding it that would be applicable for everybody, which is hard, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
part of making something applicable for everybody is you can't make so many rigid absolute rules. For example, I think we've all grown up with the idea of primary colors and red, yellow, and blue, or maybe now it's cyan, magenta, and yellow. But you have primary colors. And I was reading Itten, the Art of Color the other day, and he's talking about there's absolute primary colors, but there's been scientific experiments which are very interesting. The science of color is still continuing. There's so much they haven't figured out. And there was an experiment where they said, okay, we're going to take a number of people, we're going to test them and have them choose. Choose the primary red. This is a red that's not yellowish, it's not bluish, it's red. And the same thing for yellow and blue and I think green. Everybody had a different answer. So, and to me, that's wonderful.
Yes.
It's, to say that these are the absolute primaries, it's not the way things work. Our eyes see color, we see color differently, starting with externally the shape of our eyes, internally the receptors we have, and then it goes into the brain and oh my gosh, everything gets crazy in there. And I love that. I wanted a way to think about color that wouldn't put me in, I've taught color theory classes in university, right?
Yes.
And I felt horrible. It's like, oh, this is, you're supposed to do this, supposed to do that. And no, this isn't right. There's something wrong with the way we've been thinking about color. Look, there's many useful things about it. It's not the idea to throw everything out, but to build on that and to say, wait, we can have a much more flexible way to look at this. And even when I first started writing the book, and I think writing a book is a long project.
Yeah.
It's been years. But I first started writing it, and I was struggling with the idea of what are the primary colors? In my book, what am I going to say are primary colors? Is it red, yellow, blue? Is it cyan, magenta, and yellow? Is it the 4 opponent colors, red, yellow, blue, green? And I struggled with it for a long time, and I finally realized, wait a second, this is crazy. This doesn't, and I started looking at the research. Okay, wait a second. We have to have a different way of looking at it. That yes, we can use these colors as guideposts. In my book, I talk about, all right, let's have 4 basic colors that we can give ourselves a grounding, a place to start from, so we're not completely swimming in the open water. But let's not get so fixed on it that we feel locked into something that doesn't make sense for us personally.
Yes. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Color is definitely a personal experience, and everybody paints in a different way and mixes colors in a different way. And it's sort of an exploration like each time you sit down. It's a
Yeah,
journey.
yeah.
And
Yeah,
yeah,
and I think color theory should help us, and we were talking about this before, it should help us ask those questions.
yeah,
My problem that I've had with traditional color theory is it gave me answers I was supposed to subscribe to. It didn't help me ask questions. For example, you mentioned in my book that I have, I'll take an image and I'll change it. I think there's like over 250 images now in my book. 'Cause I try, it's a color book. I try to make it
it's
rich with
wonderful. Those
examples.
examples that really, really help.
Thank you. I hope so. But one of them, for example, I took a Van Gogh and I said, well, what happens if these red flowers down at the bottom, what happens to the painting if we take them out? And I wanted to ask the question. I also want to understand why. And I want to understand what changed, because I think we mentioned the language of color is movement. And I want to understand these colors in this painting, they're talking to each other. And
Yes.
and you were talking as well, if you change a color, what happens? What happens to their conversation? What have I changed in their dialogue? And the answer doesn't have to be right or wrong. The
Yeah.
answer more so is, well, now instead of going here, it's going there. Now instead of these colors, being harmoniously together, now they're creating some tension there. Is that what you want? Is that
Yeah.
what would you like to have? And it lets us ask questions. It lets us understand. And this again is that kind of relationship between that intuitive and
Mhm.
analytical. I can feel something. And for example, I was working on a painting a while ago, and it's actually a realistic painting. There's a building and there was this guy, and I felt that I wanted more space in that area. But I
Mhm.
also knew I didn't want to change the location of them. So how did I create space without changing the physical geometry of these
Yes.
two? And so I started, then I could go back and forth and I could ask some of the analytical, well, what if I did this? What if I did that? How would these work theoretically, right?
Mhm.
And then I could try it and I could feel it and I could see
Yes.
it and I could take that feeling and bring it back into the analytical questioning of it. Um, so yeah, I want a theory that helps me explore, that helps everybody to explore and
Mhm.
ask questions and we can all find our answers.
Yeah. So, based on that, who do you think your ideal reader is? Like, who
Hmm.
would be the person who would read your book and have this aha moment?
Actually, it's I've been fortunate talking about aha moments. There have been times when I've actually been talking about this with people and heard them exclaim that, and that's incredibly fulfilling. Just to know that I've been able to share something with them and touch them is incredibly fulfilling because you read a book, you're behind the computer, you're all alone, and you don't know. Um, but when I think about the reader for the book, for me, it's not about the level they are as an artist, or even if they are an artist. There are people who've read the book and really enjoyed it who aren't artists at all, but who like to, for example, go to museums and look at artwork and want to have a better
Yes.
understanding of it. And like I said, I mean, although all the examples are from art, most of it painting, because that's my background. That's what I know.
Mhm.
Um, it's also where I can find good quality examples. It's hard to find good quality examples of all these colors.
Yeah.
But it certainly is applicable to other areas as well, design and clothing and fashion, everyday lives. The book is not a cookbook, right? It's not a recipe book of 1, 2, 3, do this and do that, and there you go, and you're done. For me, the ideal reader is somebody who wants to explore color, wants to engage with it, who's willing to play and ask questions and investigate and maybe even try things.
Yeah.
Maybe get some paint or some colored paper out and try things. So that's what I think of as the ideal reader. I've tried really, really hard to make it as accessible as possible to people of all different levels of experience with color.
Mhm.
And in fact, because I'm selling it as an ebook on my website only right now, there's a nice opportunity for that where I can actually update the book, and
Mhm.
that's a free download. Everybody who's bought the book, that's available for free. And I've already updated this book once, and I'm working on a second and with a third update planned. And some of those updates come from feedback that I've gotten that,
Yeah.
oh, I see. If I explain this, I was talking to somebody the other day as we were working through some of his paintings, and he was trying to apply some of these ideas to it. And I realized, okay, if I explain this process better in these ways, I think it's going to help for more people to be able to engage with it. So,
Mhm.
no book is ever perfect. We can always try, but
Oh,
I've
yes.
really tried to make it. I've tried to make it as accessible as possible to all levels, to make it for a beginner or somebody who's not an artist to come in and
Mhm.
understand it, but also for people with years of experience to have a lot that they can gain from it as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I almost wish that your book would be available and like demonstrated with examples at all the like large museums where
Hmm.
as I said, you look at the painting and you think, how did they do this? How
Yeah.
come that it really speaks to me? How come that it goes so well together? And just having that explanation or like seeing how uh, just a slight change would affect
Yeah.
the viewer differently. The person who is looking at the painting would just be completely repelled or completely um, feeling like, this doesn't go well. you know.
Yeah.
So,
Or even, again, just a different sensation. It might not be that it's wrong or bad. It might just be, oh,
mhm.
that's a very different feeling.
Yes.
That's not what I would expect. I do hope at some point to be able to do that, to be able to go into museums and give talks. You know, Going a little bit back to the motivation for this book, a lot of times art history, when we get caught up in the history part, the dates,
Yes.
who this person was, what they were doing, and it can be hard to find a way to understand their work, what they were doing, and why they were doing it in their work. And so that's part of what I hope to be able to do, to have that history, or not so much history, but rather that you can walk in and you can see any artwork, whether it's contemporary work in a gallery,
Mhm.
in your friend's studio, or in a museum. And as a viewer, as well as an artist, you can understand, oh, I see, these are how these colors are talking. Oh,
Yes.
this color is looking for that color, but it's not finding it. It's finding a different color. And that's creating this movement or this tension. Oh, that's interesting. Or, oh, look how these colors go together so nicely here, and creates a very Pacific, gentle feeling, and how wonderful that
Yeah.
is. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's one painting that really, I wish I had the book with me and looked at it, but uh, there was one painting where the color of you changed the color of the dress, and I thought, I think that's the color that was really getting to me, like emotionally. And so you change it slightly, and my interest in the painting disappeared.
Yeah.
Like it completely
Probably
became
was,
he became
sorry.
uninterested. Yes.
Yeah, it was probably the painting by Mary Cassatt. I think it's Woman with a Sunflower, if I remember. I'm
I think
not
so.
the best at
Yes.
remembering titles, to be quite honest. Um, but yeah, the brilliance of her choice of colors, and it's very subtle. And if you change that color, suddenly, it's not that it's a bad painting, but your interest changes. It becomes much instead of this kind of the dress and then the flower had this real contrast,
Dynamics
this
to
real
it. It
tension.
had like the pop of
Yeah,
it. Yes.
very dynamic. And then I think I changed it so I took out that dynamism.
Yes,
And so the
it
color,
became, yeah, more complementary, I think.
yeah, not in terms of complementary colors, like opposite, but
Yeah.
more like, yeah, like going to, yeah, like harmonious, and it became a very different painting. It became a very quiet painting, a very nice painting. But that's not what she was saying. She was creating a very dynamic figure. And she did that in large part through the use of color.
Yeah. Yeah, that moment was a pivotal moment in my understanding of, okay, well, she made this slight change and it completely changed my perception of what she was trying to say.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about how you are promoting the book and how you would like to reach your ideal reader, and who you think would just jump up and down about reading it and reading it,
Yeah.
and seeing all the examples, because it's the examples really that make the book. And I'm so glad that you made so many of those examples in the book, because otherwise it's just another explanation of color theory. Okay, I've
Right.
we've read
Yeah.
it in here and there. When you actually see the conversation, you know about one piece of art or another, and how you can just completely change things up with just a slight change of hue. It's really valuable. So how are you promoting the book right now, and what are your plans for promoting the book? Like, what are your channels? How are you trying to reach your ideal reader?
Well, I'll say a few things, but I think in the end, of course, I'll defer to the expert, which is you, because this is where I'll learn as well as our audience. So honestly, that's why I say feel very fortunate to be able to talk about this with you. You mentioned one of the key difficulties in promoting this book is at first blush, it sounds like, all right, another book on color theory. Thanks. Just what I don't need, right? So, so I've been learning. I'm an artist. I'm not a marketer, but times have changed, and we have to be marketers as well. And I'm learning that process. And one of the things I'm learning is just that, is to show the dynamic aspect, show these changes, show how, these questions that we can ask. So I have, I was actually active in a little bit on Clubhouse in the early days. There's a group there. It's a nice group that we talk about painting, and I've gotten to know people through there. And I think they got to know me, and they got to know my thinking about art. And so that was, I think, because they knew me, there was maybe some trust that, oh, maybe this book is interesting. And so I sold some through there. And they've actually been a wonderful community. I've given some presentations on the book there as well. Up to now, most of my social media has been on Instagram and Facebook by default, because it copies it over, which is okay. But Facebook, maybe you're better at the algorithms than I am, but I find that I have 13,000 followers and a few hundred people see a post. Well, that's not great. But what I am starting to do is I'm getting ready to make more videos, more educational videos. So not just about the book, right? But actually talking about different areas of art. And I can present some of them in short form on Instagram, but actually I'm planning to start a YouTube channel. And I hope that will be very useful for me in selling the book, but also in connecting with a wider audience. I'm a teacher, right? And I've always, even since I was a kid, I've wanted to paint and teach art, and that's what I wanted to do. And although I teach, at the universities, but I think YouTube is a wonderful medium
Yeah.
to share with a lot of people. And, of course, I have my own blog and my website, which is out of date. I have to, I have to update that. I've been busy with the book. So I think the YouTube videos, and then I'll, have some short form
Yeah.
ones on Instagram. And I just get signed up for TikTok. So
Yeah.
haven't posted anything yet, but once I start, with the videos, I'll have a few short videos there as well.
Yeah.
But maybe
Okay.
you have better suggestions.
So my take on social media is that it's an incredibly powerful tool that you can utilize, but it takes time and effort to build the momentum.
Yeah.
And it's very easy to get discouraged, because initially you get very little engagement, very little followers, very little views, and you're pretty much like, okay, who am I doing this for?
Yeah.
But the trick to overcoming this hump is to see, like, to close your eyes and see the people who are watching or listening or reading, and see those people and how they feel, just feeling their feelings in your own heart, that they're joyful and they're happy to see or watch or read whatever it is that you created. So basically, it's like you're reaching out into the future and grabbing onto their feelings, like an anchor, and sort of, getting pulled by that. And then besides that, so that's the emotional and energetic component that kind of
that's wonderful.
creates
I like
motivation and an internal drive. That's very important to have, because if you get discouraged and you start, like, being unsure of yourself, you're kind of losing that grip. But if you are connected with that point of contact energetically, you will get there. You just pretty much, it creates a super highway between you and that point.
Yeah. No, I really love that way you said that, and it is true. I've made some real friends, actually, via social media, via Instagram and Clubhouse and Facebook, people that I've actually been in touch with outside of these mediums. And when I do try and think of it, I try and think of the person, right? I think I've learned to, when you first put your stuff out, just beginning on Instagram, and the first kind of things, you're a little nervous. And I've learned from my own feelings of that to also understand, when somebody else puts something out and they're engaging, and the importance of creating a supportive environment and a supportive and caring community, that we do support each other. And it may seem like, oh, it's just a little Instagram thing, but actually sometimes you do get to know people, and you do have real and deeper interactions with them. And sometimes, even if it's just a small thing on Instagram, that means something. That especially when we're putting out artwork, and we're like, I don't know, right? Or something, or anything. Maybe it's about our daily lives, and we don't know. And getting that support, I think I really like how you said that, because I think making it a positive environment is it helps us, it helps other people. It's really wonderful. And if I'm thinking about this as a business, well, that's how I want to run a business, right? I want to be caring. I want to be creating something that people want to be a part of, and I want to be a positive point in their lives.
Yeah, absolutely. That's that's the driving force inside of you that gets you there. And from the technical standpoint, so it's really about getting your book in front of other people's audiences. For example, you're getting your book in front of my audience right now.
Thank you. Yeah.
So reaching out to other podcasters or museum curators would be another important step for you, because it's just, it's, they already have the audience. They're already looking for quality content, quality guest, quality speaker. You have all the credentials, you have the material, you have example, you have credibility that many artists who try to do something and, they really want it, but they're just, they just need a little bit more oomph. So you have all the oomph you need. So you have absolutely all the things that you need, you already have them. And it's really just making a very long list of people that you can work with. And, it's much easier to reach out to a person by email and, get something scheduled with them and get in front of their audience. And you'll get a huge boost into your following. And most importantly, the emotional support that you get from just, feeling that your book is needed. The the boost that you get from that is invaluable. So the in-person presentations are going to be your biggest sales channel and boost, because the way you talk about it and how you are explaining different things and giving examples, it's always going to drive sales. People who see you in person, who know that, okay, must be something in this book that I have to have if I want to have my painting done just right. And that's how I feel about your book, because before reading it, I felt like, okay, I'm always unsure, which color. And after reading it, I feel like, okay, I feel more confident now, and I can always refer to it and kind of look at it. So, but the thing is, just reaching out to the galleries, museum curators, art podcasters, YouTubers. I can just give you a list of people who I think would be a good match for you in terms of, just getting in front of their audiences. And, and it has to be a very coherent partnership between you and them. So basically, you cannot reach out to your competitors, for example, to another book writer who is also writing a book about color theory, because trying to sell the same thing that you're trying to sell. So
yeah, although if they have a different enough theory, actually could be complementary.
Yes.
But yeah, I do hear your point, though. Yeah.
So, but for example, a person who has a huge following of watercolor artists, and for example, they have a series of watercolor courses. And so they sort of explain the color theory in one of their courses, through the examples that they give, but it's not as complete as yours. It's not as really well defined. And so working with them would be a really good boost into the exposure and sales and just promoting the book. So here's my approach to Instagram and Facebook. Instagram and Facebook it's like you're trickling with your posts. And it has to be a consistent flow of quality content that is branded and professional, and it gives value. It adds value to the person who is looking at it or clicking on it. So it doesn't have to be time consuming. It can be something very small, just like a link to your blog, and you can repost. Basically, you can refer to that same link to your blog, to that same article, several times in your feed, because people are always looking at the thing that is most recent, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. I tend to post once and then I posted it, I can't post again. Right?
So you can repost things with different images, with the same image. You can just shift the focus, to different part of the painting, which becomes a different image, because you sort of have the image here, cropped here, but if you just shift it here, it becomes, still complementary in your feed. It looks really good in your feed, but just shifts it a little bit. And if you're making posts that have words in them, you sort of need to define your font. So figure out your font and stick to it. Yeah. And whether it's a solid background, just white background with whatever font, and what the wording that you're trying to convey to the audience, but it needs to be consistent, because one of the most common mistakes people do is they use too many fonts, too many different fonts in their feed. It creates
I do that.
So just stick to one font or maximum two fonts. And if you're using more than two or more than one, so you can have that unusual one sort of kind of be the pop feature. And the one that you're trying to convey the information, a more readable one, kind of more frequent. So it's very readable, but still has a little bit of visual interest here, like in accents. Same thing with colors. It just, if you make it too busy for people,
right,
it becomes too busy. And so just create space in your posts where you have words here, then picture of you, picture of your painting, then picture of your art space, or an art gallery where you want to. And the thing is, artists sometimes have this misconception that they only can post their own work, like where if you are standing at an art supply store and you just snap a picture of whatever you're so enamored with, that's a post. Or if you're an art museum, you're visiting an art gallery or art museum, and you just love somebody's work, you can, snap it and say, "Hey, I'm here. I'm looking at this, and it's amazing." So just alleviating that pressure that it has to be your work, but always giving credit to whoever has created this and promoting it sort of in a way that work, and saying, "Hey, I love this. What do you guys think?" And that adds value to your community, because you're engaging with them. You're saying, "Hey, I'm a real person. Here's what I have to offer." And here's where I am. And it doesn't, and at the same time, it doesn't have to be like a news report each time. Like, a lot of people post their stuff. It's like breaking news all the time. I'm here. I'm like in Cuba, and I'm right next to these sandals, and they're awesome. You can post the same post many months later and say, "I love these sandals when I visited Cuba, and they still I still see them in my dreams." I personally like letting people know where I am at each exact moment in my life, because I feel like it's a violation of my privacy if I am posting it right now, like in real life. I know, I just want to have
a lot of pressure. It's
yes.
Oh, I have to be doing something all the time.
So it doesn't have to be like that. You just need to have a good picture of, okay, I want my feed to look this way. Because you're creating kind of like a magazine spread. That's how I would describe it. So it's sort of a magazine spread that people can interact with.
Yeah.
So if you look at it this way, it will actually relieve the pressure of constant feed that you have to create right now. It asks for a more planned way, more more strategic way of posting your things and thinking them through. And when you have some thought and color and rhythm that is planned out, and it creates a sense of order and harmony. And so when a person looks at your account, they feel like, okay, well, I can make sense of this.
Yeah.
So that's the Instagram. And Facebook. So Facebook business page. That's
I'm so behind on that.
Well, Facebook business page. It's great to have it. It does not give you as much bang for your effort as one would hope. So in the early days of Facebook, it would promote, basically it would show up in your people in the feeds of the people who followed or liked your business page, Facebook business page. And then Facebook said, there are too many brands that take advantage of people. We just want it to be more like a community and more like family and friends oriented. So they completely ditched that feature where they only show it to people who actually like or interact with your feed. So for example, you have 100 people who liked your page. Of those 100 people, only 10 people actually, consistently interact with your posts. So it will only show in their feed
to those people.
Yes, and two of these people, it's your mom and your grandma, right? so having that in mind, do not obsess or stress about having a whole bunch of followers on your Facebook business page. Facebook business page, it's really just I would call it the front, the professional front for your presence on Facebook. You just click the checkbox on your Instagram post to just put it out there, and eventually Facebook does do a little bit of algorithm promotion and does send it to somebody, but else other than your audience. But it's a very small sort of promotion. So
to be honest with you, I'm
you really need to pay the money. that's the key. So that's why they say, would you like this post is performing really well? Would you like
pay us money
to boost it or promote it? And and sometimes it is worth it. But on Facebook, there's just a different type of community than on Instagram. Instagram is the younger demographics than Facebook. TikTok is younger, so it depends on who you're targeting in terms of like who is your audience. So if you just want to spread the love to all, just do what you're doing. Post to Instagram. Check the box. Also post to Facebook and TikTok if you have an account, and that way you're covered. You're doing you're kind of laying out your pattern, your post pattern, and you're engaging with your audience on Instagram, but you're also creating a very cohesive professional profile on your Facebook account. When people can reach you, they can see you there. But the thing with Facebook, there's not much search done organically through Facebook. For example, people wouldn't go to look for a plumber on Facebook, right? And so that's the thing about Facebook. So you have your Facebook profile set up so you can partner up and work professionally with other people who you would like to work with. So it's done not for your final reader or client for the most part, unless you are promoting one of your posts on Facebook, like you're targeting, for example, you have this color movement theory post with video in it with some examples, and so you just want to promote that post to your artist community. And so you select the age in your promotion campaign, and then you also select the gender, which I always recommend, just keep it general, both men and women would engage with you. And then location, basically. Do you want to focus just on New York? Do you want to expand more to other states? Do you want to have United States and the United Kingdom and Canada as well? Basically, and playing with those things, kind of seeing how you change the demographics and how it sort of responds to those changes in terms of how clicks are coming through to you in your post. So that also is something you can play around with, but it's way less effective. It's going directly to the museum curators, working directly with the art galleries, and with the established community leaders and influencers, YouTubers. It's a way warmer approach, and it will yield you more results. So
I like that. Yeah.
I would, at this point, I would advise against creating a Facebook promotion, and trying to sell your stuff on Facebook or Instagram. Although you can try and see how, and just kind of even getting this experience. It's a valuable experience. Even promoting one post will get you to think about how does this work, and things will actually start clicking for you personally. You'll be like, okay, now I get it. Now I get it. How they are showing it to, like, they're showing it to a wide audience, and only a percentage of it is actually stopping to look at the cover. And only a small percentage is actually, clicking through stuff, and only a smaller percentage is actually clicking on something to get something, like a free sample of the book. So that's how I would create that post. Basically just get a free sample of the book. That would be one of the juicy parts that kind of makes them want to read more. But it's a way more colder and way less effective way to actually get you to the sales. The sales will happen if you reach out to those directly to those partners, museum curators, university professors who would like a guest speaker. They need somebody to just switch things up. So and having your book in the electronic format is wonderful, because it's something everybody can have on their phone and or whatever device that they have, and they can have it forever. So thank you so much for your interview. I hope this I hope my ideas and thoughts help you a little bit in promoting it, and getting it into the hands of the readers who would definitely have the aha moment that I had. So I will post a link to your website where people can buy the book in the comments, not in the comments, but in the episode details. And so thank you so much for coming. It's been wonderful to have you, and just I'm so happy that we finally met. We were on before, and I thought, I think we're going to have a great conversation. Yes.
I really enjoyed this. Thank you so much. And I can see why you're an expert in this field. I mean, your advice on the business end, I really appreciate it, because at the same time that it's practical and business and focus, it's also very human, very warm, and always, keeping that clearly in mind. And that's wonderful. It's a wonderful combination, and I can see why you're the expert in the field. So
Yeah,
thank you for that.
it's really, when you're selling things, it's you need to connect with your target, ideal reader, ideal customer, ideal person to whom you would provide the service, and you need to connect with them emotionally.
Right.
Even without knowing them, you need to sort of send out that energy ahead of time, and then the connection will happen, because what you've got, somebody is actively seeking. And if you're giving out a lot of good stuff that will be super valuable to somebody, then the people will be super glad to give you money, and they will feel like they're not paying you enough, because that's exactly because you're giving out more. You're just, this radiant being that is radiating stuff, the energy into the world. And I think that's how we all are, on a deeper level. So
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much. And guys, check out Robert's website. I will post the link, and also follow him on Instagram, and like his Facebook page on Facebook. So I am finishing this episode with best wishes to everybody in 2014.
Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and subscribe to this podcast. Check out our website and connect with us on social. We are here to help you bring your vision of success to life. So thank you, and bye for now.